Ladies, welcome back to the podcast. So, you hear me often talk about the sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And it seems like, everywhere you look at the hormone clinics and online blogs, that's what you mostly seem to hear about when it comes to perimenopause and menopause are those three hormones. Well, today we're going to dive into many of the other hormones that typically go down as we age. And with me today is one of my favorite hormone doctors, Dr. Thierry Hertoghe, practices lifespan, reversing aging medicine, and hormone therapy in Belgium. Are you in Belgium right now?
Yes, Martel,
Yes.
I'm in Belgium. It's not such a nice weather, but
Oh, no.
inside very sunny. As
Okay.
you will see, if I put my screen, it's very sunny
Oh, yes, we
inside.
have a sunshine behind you. He's got a very bright, colorful office. It's great. I'm a color person too. So Dr. Thierry, he represents a fourth consecutive generation of physicians specialized in the field of hormone therapy. His clinic is in Brussels, Belgium, and consists of a team of experienced doctors. He is an internationally known authority in medical hormone and nutritional therapies oriented to correct hormone deficiencies, reduce aging, or even in some aspects, reverse aging and possibly extend lifespan. A pioneer in various medical matters, Dr. Thierry Hertoghe is one of the scientists supporting the idea that aging is mainly due to the progressive appearance of hormone deficiencies, aggravated by nutritional deficiencies and poor lifestyle. I couldn't agree more. By correcting hormone deficiencies and other important factors, as well as by fine-tuning and personalizing treatments for each patient, he has achieved great success in medical therapies, often beyond patients' expectations. Ensuring patient safety throughout the treatment processes is a major concern for him, implying a strict and regular medical follow-up. So welcome, Dr. Hertoghe. I'm so happy to have you here. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Martel. Honored to be able to talk on your talk show.
Yes. So our audience is like all, that midlife woman that's going through perimenopause and menopause. And as you know, that this information just really isn't very accessible to women. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. I've heard you talk on several different shows and on stage, and I've heard you say that you replace 15 different hormones in yourself. Is that true?
In myself, yes, but we work on 25 different hormones. And they all have a very important function. If you look at the female hormones, they really change a person. They make a woman better, feeling more energy, looking better. But you have many more hormones that actually have also very substantial effects. And so it's just a tiny bit when you just take the sex hormones of what you could do to improve your health and feel better.
Oh yeah, I know. That's a lot. But we're going to go into some of these more obscure hormones that aren't typically talked about. So why don't we start with growth hormone? Because I know that you're a big fan of growth hormone, and I know that there's a lot of misinformation about whether or not, we should be using it. I've heard that we age faster if we use it, and then I hear that we don't age faster. So what's your thoughts on growth hormone specifically?
Well, I've overviewed all the literature, so I think I have a good scientific know-how or knowledge about it. And I have more than, since 1993 that I started with growth hormone therapy in myself and in patients. So that's just about 30 years. And I can tell you, we never had any real problem with growth hormone. Of course, we give what is called physiological doses, the dose that is right for a person to correct his or her deficiency. But the effects are really amazing. And I would say it's almost not possible not to treat well a patient without growth hormone. It makes such a difference in the life of a person.
And what age do we typically see that one going down?
Well, for all hormones, about the same timing. There's not a person who's born without some non-optimal hormone level, you could talk. But let's say at age 30, most of the hormones will decline in people. And we see that we age. We say, well, I look even better than my age. But that's not what we should do. We should look like a 25-year-old, up to me, which also doesn't happen with me. So we're not so cutting edge that many things can do. But we can probably keep people 10 years, 15 years, and perhaps even 20 years looking longer, but also feeling much better, feeling like 10 to 20 years younger. And that is really what is the most important.
Yeah. Now I know I'm in Canada, and I know that growth hormone is by far one of the most expensive hormones to replace. We're looking at about over $600 a month for growth hormone. What's your thoughts on using peptides, growth hormone peptides, instead of the actual hormones?
Well, first, let me correct that a good hormone treatment in our clinic costs 800 euros, which is about $1,000 or $900 to $1,800, not the 600 per month. And it's true that the price is about double in Canada. But even then, if you need to go to such high doses, maybe you go to a physician who doesn't know how to dose, who doesn't give you the advice how to optimize by eating better, you're having a better diet, the food. And then I think the peptides are really interesting, but the peptides don't replace growth hormone. They actually are adjuvant treatments. They help to make the treatment even better. It's not, you cannot replace something that is so fundamental. When you look at people, for example, about, let's say, 1/3 to 40% of the height depends on growth hormone. And so when you age and you don't have enough growth hormone as an adult, you shrink. So it's really a major hormone. And if you want to replace by peptide, peptides have other function. Most peptides also are secreted by organs for that organ, but not for the whole body. And so I would combine both treatments. That would be even a better strategy.
Okay. And what are we like? If you had a favorite, because there's so many growth hormone peptides, do you have one that you prefer over the other?
Not really, because I don't really work with them. I work with two other things that are very important, much more stronger, like follistatin, which for the moment is difficult available in Europe. But follistatin is actually is a blocker of a substance that shrinks the hormones, and myostatin. And when you take that substance, for example, Belgium is very well known in the world because we have those big steers full of muscles. Well, they have actually a defect, and they don't make the myostatin. So they have the same effect that if you take follistatin, you have a lot of muscles. So it's really a very anti-aging peptide. And then you have also an IGF-1, which is considered in medical milieus as a peptide, but actually it's a hormone. It's even a hormone that's more potent to reverse aging than growth hormone. IGF-1 is insulin-like growth factor 1 because it has 6% of the action of insulin, but it's the main hormone that thickens your hair, thickens your skin, thickens your muscles, and also reverses the atrophy in the brain and the heart. And so IGF-1 is really a fantastic, I would say, hormone that many people, if not everybody, should take when they age. Together with growth hormone, not in the place, and the results are really good. My hair, for example, my hair tripled in volume when I was taking IGF-1, not even doubled it. They were very thin and they got very thick. When you touch them, they're very thick.
So I didn't even know you could get IGF-1 like as a product by itself.
Yeah, it's sold in any pharmacy, but for children. Because the children cannot grow with growth hormone, can grow with IGF-1. It's more expensive. But you do get in the pharmacies a much cheaper substance called long-acting IGF-1. And that is a synthetic derivative that stays longer in blood, so you have to give a lower dose. And that is has about the same efficacy, but there are not many studies on it. So it's mostly animal studies, while in IGF-1, you do have a lot of placebo-controlled trials in adults and in children.
Mhm. I just did a couple months of the CJC ipamorelin peptide, which is a growth hormone peptide. And same thing, my hair went crazy and I had lost a bunch of hair from getting COVID. So I was like balding on the top of my hair. I've got all this new hair growth all across here from using it. And my nails they were the longest they'd ever been. I had to keep cutting them because they were getting so long.
Well, that has increased the growth hormone, or increased the growth hormone, and the growth hormone has increased the IGF-1, and so you have more IGF-1 in your blood. And the one you were talking about is I think the most potent of all growth hormone secretagogues or stimulators. So you have taken the best, and that has also longer action.
Yeah. My
Generally,
IGF-1 definitely went up. It went over range. So
yeah. Generally, the problem is with growth hormone secretagogue or stimulators is that it works during a certain time, and then after a certain time, it doesn't work enough. You need to stop and then start again. With growth hormone, you can continue all the time till the end of your life, till the day you decide to die or something.
yeah.
Because it does also extend your lifespan normally.
Okay. So that's good to know because I've heard it can shorten lifespan. So I trust that
Well,
you've,
no,
like you said, that
there are very few studies suggesting that, very badly done, and it's mainly in animal studies.
Mm,
But in humans, the higher IGF-1 is and the higher growth hormone activity is, there's more than 30 studies showing that you live longer. And so the medical news is that they publish much easier something that is scary than something that is reassuring. Because if they publish something reassuring and one day it wouldn't work, they think they would be accused. So basically, or also because people are mostly interested in what makes them scared, because
right.
then I don't know, that's the fashion here. I cannot understand that, because personally, I find life so fantastic, so marvelous. I don't, why would you look at what doesn't work while there's so many things that work?
Yes. Oh, I totally agree. Do you see it helping much with weight loss? Because we know that, as women age, we tend to gain weight in menopause. Does growth hormone help with weight loss?
Well, growth hormone in general in the studies gives about 2 kilos. So that's about, I
Five
think, four
pounds.
pounds
Yeah.
less of weight after 6 months. So doesn't look like a big change. But at the same time, you're losing about 6 kilos of fat, and you're gaining about 3 liters of water, and that's mostly in the muscles. So basically, you're getting more lean mass and more muscle mass, and so your body composition changes. So in the
Right.
place of being a person who's more fatty and doesn't have good tonic muscles, the muscles get more toned. Even if you don't even change weight, you look much slimmer.
Right. Okay, let's move on to thyroid. So, thyroid is a hormone that we see coming down in menopause. And I really find in the United States and Canada, very few hormone doctors are addressing thyroid. And it's so weird to me because we address all these other hormones that, if they come down, even especially the testosterone, like, ooh, if we even have just a little less of the testosterone, they're like, here's your pellets, here's your injections. And then thyroid is just kind of left out there to fend for itself. And I'll see it at the very bottom of the range or under range. And doctors it's like they just want to ignore the thyroid. They have to have it be so bad before they address it. So at what point in our age does it start to go down, and why?
Well, it starts in everybody around age 30 to go down, but there are many children who are deficient also in thyroid. And the reference ranges in the lab test of children are generally 15 to 20% higher for children, because they have a higher metabolism. And then they allow us, so children who don't have a higher metabolism should be treated. And so often laboratories confuse adult reference range with children. So it can start very early, and it starts long before the menopause, when you have that. Many women have also what is called autoimmune disease. They are making antibodies, proteins that attack their own gland for many reasons. One of those is just pollution causes that. And so you should start actually as soon as you have the symptoms, which many people have: swollen lower eyelids, you're stiff in the morning, you're swollen face in the morning, and you feel better in the evening with more energy. And the reason why physicians don't pay so much attention is that it's not like in menopause, where the female hormones catastrophically decline. In thyroid, it is 20% decline, 30%, but that's enough to make a difference, because thyroid hormones stimulate all this hormone secretions in your body all over. It can stimulate growth hormone production, testosterone production, cortisol production, if you don't give too much. And so it's the first treatment with which we start in most of our patients.
Do you try to help it to function better with supplementation and diet and removing the toxins? Because I would think that a lot of that is driving that deficiency in thyroid hormones.
Yes, yes. So it should be like what is called a holistic medicine. And the first consultation, when we see a patient, we generally give the patient a lot of advices on the food. Not to eat foods with pesticide, organic, but also we explain certain things, how it works for the thyroid. And also they have to stop the coffee if ever they take the thyroid, because that lowers the thyroid hormones actually. It compensates for thyroid loss because it stimulates you, but you get many disadvantages. It also lowers your growth hormone. And so does alcohol also. So there are some drinks and some foods that are not good. So the most information we give on the food to improve, but we give a lot of nutrients that can stimulate the thyroid. It's not selenium, because selenium can convert T4 to T3, so it can activate the thyroid hormones into the most active form. But that is not, it's a weak stimulator, but the biggest stimulator is iron. Many women are deficient in iron, and they can get warmer hands, warmer feet, less dry skin just by taking iron, because it activates the thyroid function. So we do look very holistically. And I would like to learn also more about how psychologically we could suppress our thyroid hormones, because what we see is that many people who retain emotions,
Yes.
they block their hormone secretions.
Mm-hmm.
And so the worst thing you can do in your life, I really believe, is retain your emotions. That doesn't mean you need to express your emotions to the outside, but at least in yourself, you can say, I feel sadness in my cells are crying, my tissues, my nose is crying, or fear, having fear, or being angry. And then the wonder that happens 15 minutes after, the body is relaxed, the emotion is over, and it has made you a better person. So you shouldn't be afraid of your emotions, but at least express them in yourself if you want to follow good hormone treatment.
I always tell my thyroid ladies that, your thyroid is your voice chakra. And I believe that this is one of the reasons why we see it so much more in women, because I don't think women are as comfortable about expressing their emotions. And so if you've, not expressed or spoken what you've needed to say in your life, you've repressed things, then I think it can create thyroid problems. And I truly believe that that's why I developed a thyroid problem. Was I had such a hard time speaking my truth and speaking out about what I really wanted to say for so many years. And it has to be addressed. I think there's an emotional component to all things. So yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And so now you speak truth on the whole internet, to the whole
Yes,
internet.
I do. Yeah, exactly. Now I can't shut up.
Amplification.
Yeah.
It's
And
very important, because we're here for, I would say, to blossom and not to retain ourselves. The best we can give to another person is the person who we are, not who the others want us to be or we think we should be, but who we really are. And that is even better than marvelous. So,
have you heard of Rolfing before? Is it in Belgium?
no, I'm not sure. I've heard the word, but I don't really know what it is. Is it sort of massage or what?
Yeah, a very deep tissue massage. And it really has so much to do with our chakras and stored emotions, because we store our emotions in deep tissue work. But I did that. I was a Rolfer for over 20 years, and I saw it time and time again where you got into somebody's deep tissue and the tears would start flowing, or they would get, the anger would come out, or set fear, whatever, all these emotions that they had trapped inside their body because they had never expressed it. So it's one of
Well,
a great
you
modality for that. Mm-hmm.
helped cure people
Yeah.
this way.
Yes. And I've heard, I've seen some stuff on your Instagram about thyroid's function for our heart, like how it helps with our heart function.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
one
don't
of the
think a lot of
major
people know
hormones.
that.
It's one of the major hormones. There's a very old study from a famous doctor in the United States, Brother Barnes, that he showed that he gave thyroid hormones, he had 18 times less new heart disease, new coronary heart disease. And it's not always so positive, all the studies, but it's really a treatment that can prevent heart disease, because not only because of its own function, it takes out myxedema, sort of waste products that accumulate in the heart. It also stimulates the metabolic reactions, but also stimulates the secretion of other hormones who will also improve the heart. So for prevention, this is one of the best treatment, not in emergency. If you have an acute myocardial infarction, you need other hormones that are much more better, like anabolic hormones, like testosterone, that is fantastic, melatonin, absolutely fantastic to decrease heart attacks. But to prevent the disease of occurring thyroid hormones is central.
Yeah, I see it a lot of the time being the thing that will raise a woman's cholesterol and blood sugar when they're hypothyroid. And you correct that deficiency and you see their cholesterol get better and you see their blood sugar stabilize. So it has a lot to do with it. Melatonin. So you just mentioned melatonin. I've partially watched your webinar last week about melatonin and cardiovascular disease. Nobody would ever think that melatonin has something to do with that. Like everybody just thinks, oh, melatonin, it's the sleep hormone. So tell us about how is it that melatonin can help with cardiovascular disease?
Well, we need to know that melatonin is one of the oldest molecules on Earth. There are bacteria that are still exist with melatonin in bacteria that we found fossils that are more than 3 billion years old. So it probably exists since 3 billion years. And it's in every living being, a plant, a flower, an insect, every living being that has been examined on Earth has melatonin. So it's very fundamental, probably for survival. Now, what it does is that it has a lot of different actions on the heart. It decreases inflammation in the heart. It preserves the heart from damage by neutralizing free radicals. We know that aging is made by little oxidations or little fires in our body, and it neutralizes all these fires very strongly. So in animal studies, for example, where they do an experimental heart attack, it can decrease the infarct size, the size of the damage, by 85% if you give enough on, and it has to be given relatively quickly within the first 3 hours or 6 hours to decrease damage. So this is really something very easy because melatonin has an advantage. It's never dangerous. You cannot give too much. You can even take too much and you just would be more sleepy, but it won't harm you. And it will preserve you. I don't think you need higher amounts than 80 milligrams, which is a very high amount, because what I take as melatonin daily is 0.1 milligram sublingual. But when there's a disease, you can take much more, and then it helps much better.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I heard you talk about that, how the dosage, the over-the-counter melatonin, it's really hard to find anything under 1 milligram. And you talk about how it's really important to, as the daily dose, that you don't need much
Yes.
more than 0.1 milligrams. Is that
Yeah.
because that's how much we normally would produce?
That's how much we normally would produce.
Yeah.
And so your overdose, for example, if you take too much, like 0.2 milligrams, and it's too much for you sublingual, then you sleep very well the first 3-4 hours of the night, but you wake up because then melatonin starts stimulating the thyroid hormones. They stimulate the conversion of the prothyroid hormone T4 to the very active T3, and then you sweat and you get maybe even a little anxious. So it is very good to have the right dose. Now, when you have a disease, it's very different. It's
Right.
I always thought that many hormones are intelligent hormones. When you need more, then they are safer, and you don't have the side effects so easily because it's like the body understands, or the molecule adapts to the disease.
Wow.
And I had a big accident. I took the vaccine and I had a stroke by the vaccine
Oh,
because
from the
it's very
vaccine.
strong.
Oh
And
my gosh.
I had difficulties talking. And so I took a lot of melatonin, of course, and it went very quickly over. And took also a lot of testosterone and it went over. So it really saves. It's always interesting for a doctor to have a lot of I would say, accidents or disease, because then you can learn more from the inside what it is.
Yes,
And
I always
doing
say all the
something,
things happen to me for a reason because I wouldn't know
yes,
everything I know about hormones if it didn't happen to me.
yes. So finally, it's very good learning process. You should thank
Yes.
this to give you all that.
And if we take too much melatonin, can it affect our cortisol? Because we know that it's kind of they're yin and yang to each other.
Yes. So that exactly. When you have a disease, it doesn't seem to affect your cortisol and you can safely take a lot. But when you don't have a disease, if you take too much, you can get really a feeling of even of burnt out if you take too much when it's not necessary. So you really need to to dose the right amount. If
Mhm.
you're very, for example, thin face, hollow face, with a lot of brown spots on your body, you're low in cortisol. There, you may not take too much melatonin when you don't have a disease. So you should really stick to a smaller dose. And usually, in people who look adrenal deficient, cortisol deficient, I give also especially lower dose, like 0.05 milligrams to maximum 0.1 milligram. In people who are very swollen up and very tall, you can give higher amounts without much problems, but it must be very, the physician or the naturopath should be very cautious not to give too much to people who are rather slim in the face or have a lot of other signs of adrenal deficiency, like dark circles under the eyes and others.
Mhm. So do we typically see cortisol also becoming deficient? I know that it gets really like for women, it gets we go super high, it seems like in perimenopause, but then it seems like it drops back to being too low once you kind of get into it. Like it does, these hormones that we're losing obviously affect our cortisol. What do you see in your practice?
Well, all the hormones decrease, also the cortisol production, and also what is called the cortisol use, the use of cortisol by the body. For example, if we examine a 24-hour urine sample, we can have an idea of the cortisol production and of the cortisol use, because then they are transformed cortisol called metabolites. And those metabolites, if there are many, that shows that cortisol has been used as a hormone for its action, because then it converts to metabolite. And these metabolites with age decrease gradually. What is conflicting is that in blood, levels with age in several studies increase of cortisol. It's because the cortisol stays in blood, doesn't go in the cells, because the metabolites decrease in urines. And so it's a false picture. And what is called the metabolic clearance, that means the uptake of the cortisol from blood to the target cells, is much decreased. And that can be activated by several ways, but basically that explains why you should also take cortisol. But the decrease in secretion of other hormones that are called anabolic hormones. Cortisol is hormones that will give energy, so we'll consume tissues for that. And the other hormones will build up the tissues. The building up hormones, anabolic hormones like testosterone, like growth hormone, decrease much quicker than cortisol or DHEA. And then there's an imbalance. So you should never take cortisol without DHEA or
Mm.
sex hormones and maybe growth hormone to make it safe.
And when it comes to replacing cortisol, there's a lot of mixed messages about how to do it because it's got such a strong negative feedback loop. I've heard that if you're gonna replace your cortisol, you've got to do it in that physiologic dose where, for women, it's
Yes.
25 to 30 milligrams a day and you dose it throughout the day. But then your body becomes very dependent on that. Like you can't miss a dose because it can be dangerous. Is that the case?
Dangerous, certainly not in most people, or you must have had your adrenals taken away.
Mm,
Because when you give a hormone treatment, you suppress the secretion by maybe 20 to 30%, but that's life-saving. If you are low in cortisol and you are in stress, you will tear and wear out your adrenal glands very quickly. It's like, I always give the example, you have a little car with a little motor and you have to drive up every day a very high hill. It will do it difficultly. At the end, it will break quickly. But if you put a second motor, like a cortisol treatment extra, then you have two motors that will go up the hill easily. And I wouldn't say forever, but it will hold on much longer. And so you shouldn't be afraid. You never suppress more in generally than 30 to 35% of your own secretion. And that's just that extra that you were making your body exhausted and that was too much for you. So you don't, giving hormone treatments help the glands to preserve. And we see this because there are studies that publish that people stop their treatment 20 years after taking thyroid treatment. And then they are, it takes 3 weeks to get back to the previous low results they had, but it wasn't lower. So it's very reassuring. The problem that there is there's confusion between the bioidentical cortisol, what we have in our body, and synthetic derivatives that are so potent that they suppress the glands much more. And those should be used with cautious at small doses. And if you can, prefer the bioidentical hydrocortisone or cortisol. These are synonyms.
yeah.
That works better. I take, for example, cortisol. I have in my pocket, for example. I have here.
You have it in your pocket.
If you should take at some moments, there's a need for more.
Right.
So if I get a little sore throat in an hour or two, it will disappear because I'll take a fraction more of cortisol. And I have here cortisol, and I have two other adrenal hormones normally that it can take more, DHEA and aldosterone or fludrocortisone. And so that helps a lot to. You don't need to take a high dose all the time, but you can add a dose when there's an increased need, for example.
When you're a little bit more stressed out.
Yeah. And then you're calmer.
I found I took Cortef once. That's what it's called here, the bioidentical. And I took it when my reverse T3 went really high from taking T4 medication. And I got really hypothyroid and got like really itchy skin, depressed, tired. I was just in quite a state. And so I took Cortef and it very quickly got me out of that place. And nothing had worked prior to that. Like I had switched to T3, and it wasn't till the Cortef came in that I started to rapidly feel better. And I thought that was interesting. And I haven't been able to find much information about why that worked so well.
Well, you should read the book of William Jeffries, and it's called Safe Uses of Cortisol. And then you get all the answers. It's an old book also, but it's very good. Like the book for thyroid of Dr. Broda Barnes, The Unsuspected Illness, Hypothyroidism, The Unsuspected Illness. Those are really books that really make you understand what it's about. And that's very precious. Most people feel and say it also often, cortisol has given me my life back. Before I was trying to survive, and now I'm living. I'm fully alive again. And so that's really a big difference it can make in the life of a person.
So can you dose it then in small amounts? Like if somebody just needed like a 5 milligram or 10 milligram kind of to top themselves up, or will that suppress their production?
No, it will not suppress. You need to take at least 50 milligrams per day to start suppressing. But you should somewhere suppress, because that the gland is overworking, is going to perish quicker because of that. I must say that the lowest dose you can give to really have efficacy, regularly efficacy, if you take it every day, is 15 milligrams in a woman and 20 milligrams in a man. Those are really the lowest doses. And then for small and thin people, because the average doses are 20 milligrams for women, and that's in two times per day, two times 10 milligrams. And in men is 30 milligrams is the average dose, 20 milligrams in the morning, 10 milligrams in the evening. Then you would say it would be much. No, because only 43% is absorbed in the intestine. So when you take 30 milligrams, that's you're actually taking something like 14 or 13 milligrams.
Right.
And your body needs 20 to 30 milligrams a day. So in non-stressful situations. So you're not really overdosing easy at those.
Okay, great. Good to know. So oxytocin, that's another one that I'm fascinated with. I've never tried it. It's you couldn't find a doctor, I don't think, in all of Canada that would actually give you like prescribe oxytocin, but I know that you can get it from like peptide sites. What's your thoughts on oxytocin? And once again, does it deplete as we age?
Yeah, oxytocin is a wonderful hormone. It completely changed my life. I
Wow.
was a very cold person and not very emotional. And so I'm much more emotional and I'm more attached also. Very, very interesting. I wrote a book on that with all the details and information, how to do it and what it does. But it's really fantastic because it makes you warm-hearted and you don't feel this as artificial. It's your real you who's expressing him or herself with this. You feel much more in love with the people you have around you. You don't want to be a person who, it's difficult to be non-loyal with oxytocin because you find your partner fantastic. You feel a sort of energy. The best way to express it, go and see a Walt Disney film with the prince who sees the princess and you have flowers and they fall in love. That's the romantic love that oxytocin enhances.
Wow.
And then for sexuality, it gives you a much stronger orgasm, an easier orgasm. So it has strong actions that really make it life more worth living.
And how do you take that one?
Well, I think the best would be to take it sublingual, but you generally find it intranasal. So you'll have to put the drops very deep in the nose, because if you do it like this, it won't work. So you have to do it outside. And that may also help. But I find some sublingual much better. But I've tried several, and there's 1 on 3 that could work. So you really need to test it. And I prefer having it pharmacy compounded. There are some good pharmacy compounds that are possible.
I'm gonna see.
Non, on a commencé à 5h30.
I'm gonna find out if we can get that in Canada, because I don't even know if we can. I'll find out from our pharmacy. Okay, so one more, and then I got some quick fire questions for you before we go. Pregnenolone. What do you think of that?
Pregnenolone is very good for short-term memory. It works very slowly, so you need to take it during several weeks, and mostly you need at least 2-3 months before it really starts working, but then it really helps you well. And you take 50 milligrams in the morning. And so it's something that we have in very high amounts in the brain, much more in the blood. And so you replenish probably your brain with more pregnenolone by doing. And I use it also in the morning, and I see the difference. If I don't take it during several weeks, which almost never happens, but it has happened, I go in another room to get something and have to do an effort to start thinking, what was I going to get? And this with pregnenolone is never a problem for me. Memory is really very sharp. So that helps. There are studies where it has been tried to be used in schizophrenia with some success, but it's not as great as for memory.
Will it help us to make other hormones? Because we know it's the master hormone. If you take it, will your body make progesterone with it? Will it start to convert down? Or do you find that it doesn't work that well for that?
Well, just to explain for your public, from cholesterol, many hormones are made. And the first step to make it from cholesterol, the hormone, is pregnenolone. And then pregnenolone can convert to adrenal hormones like cortisol, DHEA, are to sex hormones like testosterone, etc., and estradiol, female hormones. Now, in reality, when you give it to a person who's older than age 35, it doesn't seem to help to convert enough in the other hormones. So it doesn't make a real difference in general. It's better to give the other hormones. Theoretically, yes, but in practical, it really doesn't work. Or you should give a high dose, but then you can get overdose signs like oily skin with it, like 300 milligrams. And I think it's better to stick to 50, 100 milligrams a day maximum.
Yeah, I have found that too. I don't see it working very well in older kind of perimenopausal. It just doesn't seem to convert down as well. Same with DHEA. I find DHEA, people will take DHEA in their 50s in hopes that it's gonna raise their estradiol and testosterone, and I don't see it doing that.
There's very little conversion. You really need to take all the different hormones you need. That's a better way. And then you can give a lower dose of everything, but it works much better. And then you have what is called a synergy, like an orchestra. So you shouldn't be afraid of taking a lot of different things, but you should, of course, have a good physician who can help you to have a good balance, because the balance is different in every person. So,
Okay, so a couple quick fire questions, just your opinion on some things. When should we start hormone therapy? Because a lot of doctors believe a woman, especially like we're talking perimenopausal and menopausal women, a lot of doctors won't treat women until they are fully in menopause. So when do you think we should start?
it's never too late, but we start in women with female hormones at age 30 and even before. As soon as they have a deficiency, that is, then they have an irregular menstruation and etc. So we start very early, but generally in all patients almost at age 30 and not age 50, as gynecologists seem to start, because it really helps to keep them younger better. An example is a woman who's just pregnant. And after the pregnancy, she looks like a mother. Actually, she's an older woman because she makes about 10-15% less female hormones. And if you supply the missing hormones, she looks again the young woman she was before. And this is actually valid for all other hormones. Not necessarily, they do not necessarily have to do something with the pregnancy, but like growth hormone starts at age 30, starts decreasing. I started my deficiency at age 31, and unfortunately, I just took it at age 38. But it really was helpful. I got rid of a lot of signs I had, like difficult recovery, need 7 or 8 hours of sleep, and also having more anxiety, and that disappeared with this calming hormone. And so DHA also starts to decrease quite, that's probably the hormone that decreased almost the most at age 30. After it goes very quick to decline, testosterone decreases. So really age 30 is the turning point, but you might be genetically already having deficiencies or polluted, and you need to be corrected earlier.
And even in our 40s, if we still are having a period, but we're having a lot of symptoms of low estrogen, do you find that that's okay to give estrogen for women if they're in perimenopause?
Yes, of course. You need to give the female hormones. It's really life-saving. It gives also more quality of life. And I didn't see any more cancers. In reality, we have, by doing that quickly, we have about 30-35% less risk of new cancers compared to a general population. So that's good. Of course, it's not just the hormones, it's because we also improve the food and things like that, but really possible to do it better and avoid the risk or decrease the risks.
Yes. Okay, what's the best way to test hormones?
The best way to test hormones is to combine a physical examination, a list of symptoms we have on our website, symptoms where you can answer questions, and then you know if you're hormone deficient, at least for the complaints. And then you should do a laboratory test. And it's not only the hormone that should be asked, but most hormones are transported in blood by a binding protein, a transporter. You need also a transporter, because if there's too much transporter, it keeps the hormone in the blood, doesn't go in the cells. And then we have a third type of test, which is called a metabolite. For example, if I give male hormone to a woman, it can convert too much to dihydrotestosterone, and then dihydrotestosterone, which gives hair growth, body hair growth, can transform to understand the gluconate. And I know I need to be careful and I need to change the balance. So it's very important. And so what we do is we do a blood test that gives a sort of snapshot picture of what the state is. And we also do initially a 24-hour urine test. And that is very helpful because then we have a 24-hour picture of your hormone production and hormone activities because of the metabolites. So it's better combining blood and 24-hour urine test. Saliva test is only really for me interesting if you do cortisol curve.
Yeah.
But for the other hormones, there's too much possibilities of fluctuations. And so it's not easy to have the right amount of hormone.
Yes, we do the Dutch urine test as much as we can with the blood work too. Like combining those two, I find to be very helpful. And I even had some women talking about it yesterday saying, oh, I wish I would have done the urine test before I started testosterone because we broke out in acne and they were having hair loss. And so they were really favoring that 5-alpha reductase pathway to dihydrotestosterone, which can happen for a lot of women. So it is, I think, a good idea.
For acne, it's mostly the testosterone, high levels of testosterone, not so much of dihydro. Dihydro gives body hair overgrowth, and testosterone and DHEA give more acne.
Acne, yes. Yeah. DHEA, I get acne from. Okay. So best delivery forms what do you prefer? Do you prefer creams, gels, injections, troches?
Well, it all depends on which hormone.
Which hormone,
Thyroid, cortisol is tablets. And for the sex hormones like testosterone, it is mostly either creams, liposomal creams. They are very high absorption, much better than the gels, and also injections of testosterone enanthate or testosterone indicanoate. Now pellets are not so bad. They're actually good, but I like to be able, with a transdermal, you can give it every day. You can fluctuate the dose. If you do more sports, you can take more. So you can do more fine tuning. But for people who don't want to bother much, pellets are very good too. You have done a basis that is always there during 3 months, but not so much during 4 or 5 months. Generally, you need to change that every 3 months.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Okay. I know we're out of time almost. Yeah, I was going to ask about the pellets. So I got your point on that. Progesterone, oral versus transdermal. There's a lot of controversy about that.
It's vaginally or oral, and mostly that we give. The transdermal, you have to put it in a liposomal cream, otherwise it doesn't penetrate, and you have to put it on high absorption places like the face or the upper chest where you have more blood vessels. Otherwise, it doesn't work so well. So generally, people are more satisfied with the oral or the vaginal forms. Vaginal would be the ultimost, but some find it uncomfortable, so they can take then just the oral, and that works well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to come on the show. I've wanted to talk to you for a while now. And where can people find you? Because you've got a lot of information. He's got a great book for the layperson, all about hormones. It's a very easy read, but with a lot of great information in it. So I'll link to that actually on Amazon in the show notes. But where can people find you?
Well, basically, there are 2 ways to find. If you want to have education, information, it's Hertog Medical School. So the Hertog, Hertoghe, Hertog Medical School. Or you can also, the official website for consultation, the office website, that's hertog.eu, but you find it easy. If you just put my name, Thierry Hertoghe, on internet, you'll find it easy. And I would really propose to your audience to know much more about, because somewhere, one day, you all have to be your own doctor.
Yes.
So you need to have enough information, and it's maybe not the only doctor. You should be your health manager, but you need to be informed. And one of the most important things for health is getting your hormones back as they should be for a healthy body and to useful levels. And so it's really interesting for also to learn much. And I always propose, if you want to start a treatment, go first to people who know the most, your clinic probably, our clinic, because you gain so much time. You don't have just one hormone or two hormones, you can get some more hormones. And then you are well started, and then other doctors can sometimes take it over once we made the program. So there's many ways to optimize your treatment, but I would say do the best for yourself.
Yeah, I always say
That's the
don't
thing to do.
suffer. There's, taking hormones is safe. It's been proven to be safe for majority of people. It's very anti-aging and can really help you to live your best life as you age.
Yeah, you just need to avoid overdose signs, and we deliver always information, and you can find on internet what you have when you have overdoses. So if you're careful with that, you just take a lower dose if something happens of an overdose sign, and then it comes in order, and you're safer to take hormones. It's completely unsafe, and it's maltreatment, I would say, not to take hormones in our time with all the science we have, the studies, and the competence of many, many people now, many doctors and naturopaths.
Amazing. All right. Well, I hope one day that I get to meet you in person at one of your talks. And I only have watched them online, but I will be, I'm planning to get down there this year at A4M, some of the conferences. So I hope to see you down there.
Okay,
And thank you so much for being on the show.
you're welcome. Thank you.